Inspection turns joyful as Captain Can't Hide smiled over Sharp King's guard. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of fresh dew from the surrounding gardens. The courtyard itself was vast, paved with smooth stones that reflected the morning light. Towering walls lined the area, their stones worn with age but still strong, a testament to the centuries of kings who had ruled from within. Flags bearing the royal crest fluttered gently in the breeze, and the distant sound of a horn echoed softly through the courtyard, announcing the beginning of the morning's activities. Captain Rowland, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, stepped into the courtyard with a purposeful stride. His boots clicked against the stones with a steady rhythm, each step carrying the weight of experience and authority. Roland had served the kingdom faithfully for over 2 decades, rising through the ranks not just because of his skill in combat, but because of his sharp mind, his discipline, and his unwavering sense of duty. He was a man of few words, and his presence alone commanded respect. Soldiers straightened their postures the moment he entered, instinctively recognizing the seriousness that his inspections always carried. The guards were lined up in neat rows, their polished armor glinting in the early sunlight. Each soldier stood tall, holding their spears or swords with precision, eyes fixed straight ahead. Some shifted slightly on their feet, adjusting gauntlets or helmets, hoping to avoid the sharp gaze of Captain Rowland. Others, more confident, simply held their stance, knowing that years of training had prepared them for this very moment. The sound of armor moving and faint whispers filled the air as the guards awaited the inspection, a mix of anticipation and nervous energy spreading among them. Roland's eyes swept slowly across the line of soldiers, noting every detail. The soldiers' boots had to be spotless, their armor free of dents or scratches, and their weapons perfectly maintained. More than that, their posture had to reflect discipline and confidence. He had always believed that a soldier's appearance and conduct were a direct reflection of their dedication. A small misalignment of a shoulder, a loose strap on a cuirass, or a hesitant glance could reveal more about a guard than any words ever could. As Roland approached the first row, he noticed how each guard's hands gripped their weapons tightly. Some had veins standing out on their forearms, evidence of the tension they felt under his gaze. Roland paused for a moment, observing the subtle differences between the soldiers. He could tell which ones had trained rigorously, which ones followed orders mechanically, and which ones simply relied on luck to get through inspections. The nuances were all there for those who knew where to look, and Roland's sharp eyes missed nothing. Among the line of guards, one figure stood out immediately, though not for any flaw. Sir Aldrich, a young but experienced guard, carried himself with a calm confidence that drew attention naturally. His armor shone with a brilliant polish, each plate perfectly aligned, the leather straps holding it snugly in place. He did not fidget or glance around nervously, unlike some of the others. His eyes were steady, scanning the courtyard with an alert awareness, and his jaw was set with quiet determination. There was something in the way he held himself that suggested not only discipline, but pride, a pride that was earned through years of rigorous training and commitment to duty. As Roland stepped closer, he could feel the tension in the air. The other guards seemed almost to hold their breath, aware that the captain's scrutiny could uncover even the smallest mistake. Roland reached Sir Aldrich, his gaze sharp and calculating. He didn't immediately speak but let the silence stretch for a moment, a subtle test in itself. The young guard's stance remained perfect, unwavering. Roland's sharp eyes traveled over every inch of Aldrich's armor, noticing the flawless polish, the precise positioning of each strap, the way his boots were perfectly cleaned and oiled. Everything about Sir Aldrich reflected meticulous care, but more than that, it showed discipline that went beyond mere appearance. Finally, Roland broke the silence with a question, not harsh but firm. "Tell me, Sir Aldrich, What is the proper procedure for securing the main gate during a night watch? His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of authority that could unsettle even the most experienced soldiers. Sir Aldrich responded immediately, reciting the procedure with clarity and confidence. His voice was steady, precise, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. Each step he described reflected not just memorization, but understanding and experience. Roland nodded slightly, more to himself than to the guard. He continued down the line, asking similar questions, testing each soldier's knowledge and attentiveness. Some faltered, their answers uncertain or incomplete, while others replied confidently but with minor errors. But Sir Aldrich's answers were perfect. There was a sharpness to his mind, a readiness that was rare even among seasoned soldiers. As the inspection continued, Roland found his attention repeatedly returning to the young guard, noting the combination of skill, discipline, and quiet composure that made him exceptional. The morning sun continued to rise, warming the courtyard and casting long shadows across the stones. The clinking of armor and the muted rustle of movement created a rhythm, almost like a dance, as Roland moved from one soldier to the next. The inspection, which often felt rigid and formal, began to carry a subtle energy of its own. There was a sense of anticipation, a feeling that something unusual might happen today, though none of the guards could say exactly what it was. Even the usually serious and reserved Captain Roland felt a slight shift within himself, a recognition of excellence that brought a rare flicker of warmth to his otherwise stoic demeanor. By the time Roland reached the middle of the line, the tension among the soldiers had begun to ease slightly. Sir Aldrich's confidence seemed to have a calming effect, as if others drew strength from the example he set. The guards who had been nervous moments ago straightened their posture again, inspired by the young guard's unwavering focus. Roland observed quietly, noting not just individual skill, but the subtle ways that leadership and example could influence an entire group. As the inspection progressed, Roland continued his meticulous examination, but there was now a quiet sense of anticipation building in the courtyard. Something about this morning, about the way the soldiers carried themselves and the precision with which Sir Aldrich performed, created a rare harmony. The usual rigidity of the inspection was beginning to give way to a more subtle form of respect and recognition. The soldiers were not just following orders. They were demonstrating pride in their service, in the standards they had set for themselves, and in the legacy of the King's Guard that they represented. By the time Roland reached the end of the first row, he had seen enough to understand that this inspection would be different from all the others. There was no need for stern reprimands or corrective actions. What he had witnessed so far was excellence in its purest form. Yet even with this recognition, Roland remained alert, aware that true discipline was not measured by a single inspection, but by consistency over time. He allowed himself a brief moment to acknowledge the pride he felt, a fleeting emotion that he rarely permitted himself to experience in the line of duty. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Captain Roland's eyes, sharp and observant as ever, continued to scan the line of soldiers, noting every detail. And while he maintained his outward appearance of authority and seriousness, a subtle shift had occurred, a recognition that true excellence, embodied by Sir Aldrich and reflected in the pride of the other guards, could inspire even the most disciplined and stern of leaders. As Captain Roland moved past the first row of guards, he felt the weight of his responsibility pressing on him. Inspections were not just a formality. They were a way to ensure that every soldier was prepared, disciplined, and ready to protect the kingdom at a moment's notice. Each misstep, each lapse in attention could have serious consequences, and Roland had long learned that vigilance could not be compromised. Yet, even as he scrutinized the guards, he felt a subtle change in the atmosphere, a lightness that he rarely experienced during these formal routines. Sir Aldrich remained at the center of Roland's attention. The young guard's posture had not wavered, and his eyes followed every movement with quiet alertness. Roland's questions, which were designed to test knowledge, discipline, and quick thinking, were met with calm and precise answers. Sir Aldrich's voice was clear, steady, and confident, and he answered each inquiry as though the information had been part of him for years. Roland noticed that it wasn't just memorization that guided the guard's responses. It was understanding, experience, and a natural sharpness that could not be taught. The other soldiers could not help but notice the interaction. They watched Roland's gaze linger on Sir Aldrich, the way he nodded approvingly at certain answers, and the brief, almost imperceptible twitches of a smile that seemed to escape the captain's usually stern face. The guards exchanged subtle glances among themselves, sensing that something unusual was taking place. For years, they had been accustomed to the formal, sometimes harsh, tone of inspections. They knew that Roland rarely allowed any expression of emotion beyond strict professionalism. But now, even the most disciplined among them felt the faint shift in energy, a mix of respect, curiosity, and even amusement. Roland continued down the line, questioning each soldier individually. Some faltered under pressure, their responses uncertain or incomplete. Others responded with confidence but made small mistakes that revealed gaps in their training or understanding. Each time this happened, Roland maintained his usual composure, making mental notes of what needed improvement. Yet, every time he glanced at Sir Aldrich, he was reminded of the standard of excellence he hoped to see in all his soldiers. Aldrich's performance was flawless, his attention unwavering, and his calm confidence seemed to shine as an example to others. The captain decided to increase the challenge. He posed scenarios that required quick thinking, problem-solving, and leadership under pressure. "Imagine the castle gate is threatened by an unexpected visitor during the night," he said. "What is your immediate course of action, and how would you coordinate your team?" The question was meant to test not just knowledge but adaptability, and many soldiers hesitated, struggling to articulate the correct procedures. Sir Aldrich, however, responded immediately. He outlined the steps clearly, explaining not only what he would do, but why each action was necessary. His answers demonstrated a thorough understanding of both strategy and responsibility, showing that he could lead under pressure without hesitation. Roland's eyes narrowed slightly as he listened. He was impressed, not just by the precision of Aldrich's responses, but by the quiet authority in his voice. It was rare to see such confidence paired with humility. The young guard did not boast or try to impress. He simply stated facts and procedures with clarity and purpose. The captain felt a flicker of admiration, an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. He realized that excellence could inspire, and for the first time in many inspections, he allowed himself to feel that subtle sense of pride that went beyond duty. The other guards, sensing the interaction, began to relax slightly. The tension that had filled the courtyard earlier seemed to ease as they observed Sir Aldrich's poise. Even those who had been nervous moments ago straightened their posture, inspired by the young guard's example. Some whispered quietly to one another, commenting on how flawless Aldrich's answers were, how disciplined he looked, and how calm he seemed under scrutiny. The courtyard was no longer just a place of formal inspection. It was becoming a space where respect, admiration, and subtle camaraderie were emerging. Roland decided to test another aspect of the soldiers' abilities, their attention to detail. He walked slowly along the line, examining armor, weapons, and equipment. A sharp eye could notice even the smallest flaw, a scratch on a breastplate, a misaligned strap, or a weapon that wasn't polished correctly. Some guards fidgeted nervously as Roland approached, aware that their mistakes could be noticed immediately. But Sir Aldrich's armor remained perfect, every piece polished and aligned, his weapon gleaming in the sunlight. The young guard's attention to detail was not just about appearance. It was a reflection of his discipline, his respect for his role, and his understanding that even the smallest mistakes could have consequences in times of crisis. Roland stopped in front of Sir Aldrich once more, this time asking about maintenance procedures. "How do you ensure that your armor remains in top condition, even during long campaigns?" he asked. Aldrich's response was precise and thorough. He explained the regular cleaning routines, the careful inspection of each joint and strap, and the importance of proper storage. Roland listened, noting how methodical and consistent the guard's approach was. He could see that this was not simply a routine for Aldrich, it was a commitment, a way of life that reflected discipline, responsibility, and pride in service. The captain walked a few steps back, his mind reviewing everything he had observed. The morning sun now hung higher in the sky, casting bright light across the courtyard and illuminating the fine details of the soldiers' armor. The clinking of metal and the faint shuffle of movement created a rhythm as the guards shifted slightly in response to Roland's inspections. It was a rhythm that spoke of order, discipline, and readiness, a rhythm that Sir Aldrich seemed to embody naturally. Roland decided to push further, testing the guards' observational skills. He asked the soldiers to describe subtle changes in the courtyard, from the position of a flag to the behavior of a fellow guard. Some struggled to notice details, while others provided incomplete observations. Aldrich, however, responded with precision, noting even minor adjustments in posture and movement, demonstrating not only attentiveness but also situational awareness. Roland could see that the young guard's training went beyond physical skill. It extended to mental sharpness, observation, and the ability to anticipate potential issues before they arose. As the inspection progressed, Roland found himself feeling a rare sense of enjoyment. There was satisfaction in seeing soldiers perform at their best, in witnessing discipline, pride, and capability come together. Yet what he felt for Sir Aldrich went beyond mere approval. It was a quiet admiration, a recognition of talent and dedication that was genuinely inspiring. Roland realized that this moment, this interaction, was more than just an inspection. It was a lesson in excellence, leadership, and the subtle power of setting an example. The other guards noticed the change in atmosphere. Laughter, quiet smiles, and subtle exchanges began to appear as tension slowly melted away. They had been trained to endure inspections with seriousness, but now they witnessed something different. A captain acknowledging skill and dedication in a way that inspired joy rather than fear. Sir Aldrich's presence seemed to influence not only Roland, but also the entire line of guards, creating an environment where respect, admiration, and camaraderie were subtly taking root. Roland decided to conclude this part of the inspection with one final challenge, a practical demonstration. He instructed the guards to perform a coordinated drill, testing their ability to move in formation, respond to commands, and maintain precision under pressure. The soldiers executed the drill with care, but it was Sir Aldrich who stood out again. His movements were fluid, precise, and confident. He guided those around him naturally, maintaining formation while subtly adjusting the rhythm of the group. Roland observed quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction at what he saw. The young guard was not just performing tasks flawlessly, he was inspiring excellence in others simply through his example. By the time the drill ended, the morning had fully settled over the courtyard. Sunlight warmed the stones, and a gentle breeze carried the distant sounds of the castle waking for the day. Captain Roland allowed himself a brief smile, a rare expression that had been absent in countless inspections before this one. Sir Aldrich's discipline, confidence, and skill had not only passed every test, but had also quietly transformed the mood of the entire guard. What had started as a formal routine had evolved into a subtle celebration of excellence, pride, and dedication. The guards stood at ease, their postures still respectful but now carrying a hint of pride and inspiration. Roland walked along the line one last time, nodding to each soldier in acknowledgement of their efforts. Sir Aldrich met his captain's gaze, returning a respectful nod. There was no need for words. The recognition and mutual respect were clear. Roland knew that this inspection, unlike any other, had accomplished more than evaluating readiness. It had reminded everyone present that true excellence could inspire joy, confidence, and unity. By mid-morning, the sun had climbed high in the sky, spilling warm light across the castle courtyard. The guards had long since settled into their routines, yet the atmosphere remained unusually vibrant. Normally, inspections carried a stiff, almost oppressive air, with each soldier focused on maintaining perfect posture, hoping to avoid even the smallest criticism. But today, there was a subtle shift in the energy, a rare combination of discipline and anticipation that made the courtyard almost hum with quiet excitement. Captain Roland, moving carefully between the rows, could sense it as well. Sir Aldrich had continued to stand out, not just for his skill and discipline, but for a calm presence that seemed to influence the entire line of soldiers. Each step he took, each motion of his hands, appeared purposeful yet effortless. Roland watched him closely as he demonstrated a series of drills, his movements sharp, precise, and confident. The other soldiers followed, attempting to match Aldrich's rhythm and posture, and while most succeeded, there was no doubt who the center of attention was. Aldrich's leadership was quiet but undeniable. He did not shout or command with force, yet the guards instinctively mirrored his focus and attention. Roland, who rarely allowed himself to show emotion during inspections, felt a strange warmth in his chest. He noticed small things, how Aldrich's shoulders were relaxed but strong, how his gaze remained alert without a hint of tension, and how he responded to minor mistakes among the other guards with gentle correction rather than frustration. For Roland, who had spent decades enforcing discipline with strictness and precision, it was a reminder that excellence could inspire without harshness. It was a lesson he hadn't expected to feel during a routine inspection, yet the young guard had brought it to life effortlessly. As the morning progressed, Roland decided to test the guards' coordination and teamwork further. He called out a series of commands designed to simulate unexpected threats, shifts in formation, changes in positions, and rapid responses to hypothetical attacks. Most soldiers performed well, their training evident in each movement, yet their confidence seemed to ebb and flow with each command. Aldrich, however, remained steady. He adjusted his stance, observed the changes carefully, and subtly guided those around him, ensuring that the formation remained strong and precise. His ability to lead without words, simply through presence and careful action, drew Roland's eyes repeatedly. The captain allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile as he watched. It was not the broad grin of amusement, but a quiet recognition of something rare and valuable. True leadership, coupled with skill and composure, could make even the most tense moments feel harmonious. Roland realized that Aldrich's example had subtly changed the dynamics of the entire guard. The younger soldiers, previously nervous or unsure, now moved with more confidence. They mirrored Aldrich's calm composure, responding more effectively to instructions and displaying pride in their precision. The inspection, intended as a test, had become a demonstration of what discipline, experience, and leadership could achieve when combined naturally. Roland decided to observe a different aspect of skill, problem-solving under unexpected circumstances. He presented a scenario where an intruder might attempt to enter the castle during a routine patrol. Guards were to react immediately, coordinating with their neighbors, using both strategy and instinct to prevent a breach. Many struggled to respond with clarity, their answers scattered or hesitant. Aldrich, however, stepped forward calmly, outlining a precise and logical plan. He considered multiple contingencies, explaining how each guard would respond to different challenges while maintaining the safety of the castle. His explanation was clear, concise, and rooted in practical experience, leaving no doubt that he could handle the situation effectively. Roland's respect for the young guard grew even further. He had expected competence, of course. That was why Aldrich had been chosen as part of the elite guard. But what he saw went beyond mere skill. Aldrich demonstrated foresight, judgment, and the ability to inspire those around him without needing to assert authority aggressively. It was the kind of excellence that left a lasting impression, and Roland felt a rare satisfaction, a moment of pride he allowed himself to feel openly, though still tempered by his usual professionalism. The other guards could not help but notice the interaction. Whispers ran quietly through the ranks as soldiers exchanged observations about Aldrich's performance, noting his confidence, discipline, and composure. Some younger guards were inspired, mimicking his posture and tone in subtle ways. Others, more experienced, nodded quietly in approval, recognizing a peer whose abilities reflected the highest standards of the Royal Guard. Even those who had been nervous or uncertain earlier seemed to draw confidence from Aldrich's example. The mood in the courtyard had shifted from tension to a blend of respect, admiration, and subtle excitement. Roland, observing the quiet changes, decided to push the soldiers' endurance. He instructed them to maintain positions for extended periods, testing both physical stamina and mental focus. The guards shifted and adjusted, muscles straining against the weight of armor and weapons, yet they remained steadfast. Aldrich, as always, held his position with impeccable poise. His movements were minimal but precise, conserving energy while maintaining readiness. He corrected minor adjustments in the soldiers around him with gentle gestures, ensuring that the formation stayed strong without breaking the flow of the exercise. The captain felt a deeper appreciation for the young guard with each passing moment. He noted how leadership was not just about giving commands, but about setting an example that others could naturally follow. Aldrich's quiet composure, combined with his skill and attention to detail, had transformed what could have been a grueling drill into a demonstration of teamwork, discipline, and mutual respect. Roland realized that this was the type of soldier who could inspire not just obedience, but loyalty, pride, and a sense of purpose in others. After the endurance test, Roland shifted his focus to observation and awareness. He asked the guards to identify changes in the courtyard, such as the movement of flags, subtle shifts in other soldiers' positions, or distant sounds that might indicate approaching activity. While many struggled to notice all details, Aldrich again excelled. His eyes scanned the environment with precision, his mind cataloging and interpreting each observation. Roland saw that the young guard's awareness extended beyond the immediate drill. He was constantly assessing, anticipating, and preparing. It was a rare combination of mental sharpness, physical skill, and discipline that left a profound impression on the captain. As the morning continued, Roland allowed himself to enjoy a subtle sense of amusement. He observed how Aldrich's calm confidence seemed to lift the spirits of the entire guard. Soldiers moved with more precision, their responses were quicker, and even mistakes were corrected without tension. The rigid structure of the inspection, normally filled with the quiet anxiety of the guards, had become more fluid and dynamic. Roland realized that the environment he had created, a space for testing discipline and skill, was being transformed by a single individual who led by example. Finally, Roland decided to step back and watch the guards as a whole. He observed their synchronized movements, the careful attention to detail, and the subtle ways they supported one another. The young guard, Sir Aldrich, remained at the center, a calm presence whose example radiated outward. Roland's mind reflected on the lessons of the morning. Discipline alone was important, but discipline combined with leadership, skill, and composure could inspire excellence in others. It was a reminder that true leadership did not rely solely on authority or commands. It thrived when others willingly followed, because they trusted the person leading them. By late morning, the exercise and inspection had covered a wide range of tests: individual skill, teamwork, endurance, observation, and problem-solving. The guards were beginning to show signs of fatigue, yet there was a quiet sense of accomplishment among them. They had performed well, and many of them had been influenced positively by Aldrich's example. Roland, who rarely allowed himself to display emotion, felt a rare flicker of joy at what he had witnessed. For the first time in a long while, he felt that the inspection had accomplished more than assessing readiness. It had inspired pride, confidence, and camaraderie among the guards. Roland approached Sir Aldrich once more, observing him with a mixture of respect and subtle admiration. The young guard met his captain's gaze steadily, without arrogance, without hesitation. The respect between them was mutual, unspoken yet profoundly clear. Roland could see that Aldrich's influence extended beyond the physical drills and inspections. It had changed the mood, the confidence, and the cohesion of the entire guard. What had begun as a formal routine had evolved into a moment of quiet inspiration and leadership, a turning point that Roland would not soon forget. As the sun continued its climb toward noon, the guards stood in their positions, armor gleaming, weapons at the ready, but their expressions carried something new: pride, confidence, and the subtle joy that came from achieving excellence. Roland walked slowly along the line, his eyes scanning every detail, yet his mind was already reflecting on the lessons of the morning. Sir Aldrich had demonstrated what it meant to be truly disciplined, skilled, and influential, not through force or intimidation, but through calm example, unwavering focus, and quiet leadership. The captain allowed himself one small, private smile, a rare acknowledgement of satisfaction and appreciation. It was a smile reserved for moments of true excellence, and today Sir Aldrich had earned it. Roland knew that this inspection would be remembered not just for the performance of the guards, but for the inspiration brought by one soldier's example. For the first time in many years, the routine of inspection had become something more: a celebration of skill, leadership, and the quiet joy that comes from witnessing true excellence in action. As the inspection moved past mid-morning and the sun rose higher in the sky, the courtyard's energy had changed completely. What had begun as a formal, serious review of the soldiers' skills and discipline was transforming into something unusual, even for Captain Roland. There was an unmistakable lightness in the air, a subtle energy that made the usually tense environment feel almost playful. The soldiers, who had been tense and precise under the early scrutiny, now seemed more relaxed, their movements sharper but less rigid, their faces carrying faint smiles that had been absent at the start. Sir Aldrich remained at the center of the activity, calm and focused, yet there was a subtle warmth in his presence that encouraged others to perform with confidence rather than fear. Captain Roland noticed it immediately. It was not just Aldrich's skill or discipline that impressed him. It was the way he seemed to uplift the entire guard, drawing out the best in them without demanding it. This quiet influence was rare and remarkable, and Roland felt it deeply as he observed the subtle transformations in each soldier's stance, movements, and expressions. Roland decided to test the soldiers in a slightly different way, one that involved not only skill but interaction, observation, and even humor. He asked the guards to perform a sequence of drills in pairs, focusing on coordination, timing, and mutual awareness. Some guards struggled slightly, their movements uneven or uncoordinated, but Sir Aldrich remained poised and precise. As he demonstrated, he added subtle variations to the drills, small twists that required attention and quick adaptation. It was not mischievous or reckless. It was clever, engaging, and subtly playful. The other soldiers laughed quietly when they successfully mirrored the moves, and even the most serious among them couldn't help but smile at the unexpected twist in their routine. Roland's stern expression softened as he watched. The captain, who had always believed that discipline must be strictly enforced without emotion, found himself enjoying the moment. There was joy in seeing the soldiers adapt, succeed, and even laugh quietly under the pressure of his instructions. He realized that excellence did not have to be dry or joyless. Skill and discipline could coexist with light-heartedness when guided by respect and mutual understanding. For the first time during an inspection, Roland allowed himself to appreciate not only the competence of his soldiers, but also their spirit, their energy, and their ability to respond creatively to challenges. The turning point came when Roland directed the guards to a more dynamic exercise. He instructed them to simulate a scenario in which a group needed to protect the castle gate from multiple attackers. Soldiers were required to move swiftly, adjust positions, and coordinate actions precisely. Aldrich, naturally, took the lead without formally being asked. He guided his companions with subtle gestures, demonstrating the required positions and strategies. But then he introduced small, playful challenges, like requiring a sudden change in formation or a quick adjustment in the way weapons were held. The other guards reacted with a mixture of concentration and amusement, laughing softly when they managed to meet the challenge successfully. Roland could no longer hide his emotions. The captain, known for his stoic demeanor, felt a flicker of genuine amusement at the subtle cleverness and joy that Aldrich brought to the exercise. For decades, Roland had conducted inspections with seriousness, enforcing rules, correcting mistakes, and maintaining order with little room for levity. But now, in this courtyard, surrounded by soldiers performing with both skill and enjoyment, he realized that laughter, pride, and joy were not distractions. They were reflections of confidence, mastery, and the unity of the guard. He found himself smiling, the corners of his mouth curling in a way that was both rare and unrestrained. The soldiers noticed the shift immediately. They glanced at their captain, surprised to see the usually stern and serious Roland smiling. A few of them exchanged quiet, delighted whispers, acknowledging the unusual and joyful sight. The tension that had existed earlier dissolved completely. The courtyard, once filled with the quiet stiffness of anticipation, was now alive with energy, cooperation, and subtle laughter. Even small mistakes were met with encouragement rather than reprimand, as the soldiers adapted to the playful challenges introduced by Aldrich. Roland, enjoying the rare moment of lightheartedness, decided to take the interaction a step further. He asked Aldrich to demonstrate a sequence of defensive maneuvers while blindfolded, trusting his awareness, precision, and experience. The idea was risky, yet Aldrich accepted the challenge with calm confidence. As the young guard moved through the steps, the other soldiers watched in awe. He shifted gracefully, anticipating the positions of imaginary opponents with precision, reacting to subtle cues that the others often missed. Each movement was fluid, confident, and perfectly controlled. The soldiers clapped quietly at the success of the demonstration, and Roland couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at witnessing such mastery. Aldrich's performance inspired creativity in the other guards. They attempted similar exercises with partners, introducing playful twists and minor challenges to test their coordination. Some stumbled, others succeeded brilliantly, but the mood was one of encouragement rather than criticism. Roland realized that this atmosphere of shared effort, challenge, and light-hearted engagement had transformed the inspection into an experience that built camaraderie, pride, and motivation in ways strict enforcement could not achieve. He reflected quietly that leadership was not just about authority. It was about inspiring others to achieve their best while fostering a sense of enjoyment and belonging. As the morning progressed, Roland found himself walking slowly among the soldiers, observing, commenting, and occasionally joining in demonstrations. His presence, once a source of tension and fear, now encouraged participation and confidence. Soldiers who had earlier been nervous or hesitant now executed drills with precision and enjoyment. Small smiles, quiet laughter, and nods of encouragement spread through the ranks. Aldrich continued to lead subtly, his calm demeanor providing a stable center around which the soldiers' confidence could grow. The combination of skill, discipline, and subtle playfulness created an atmosphere that was vibrant, inspiring, and unforgettable. Roland decided to add a final element to the morning's inspection, a challenge requiring both observation and memory. He asked the guards to recall small details from earlier exercises, positions of weapons, patterns of movement, and the precise timing of specific commands. Many struggled, but Aldrich guided his peers with quiet hints and gentle gestures, ensuring they succeeded without taking direct credit. The result was a collective triumph, a demonstration of skill, focus, and unity that reflected the best qualities of the Royal Guard. Roland's heart swelled with pride, and the smile on his face grew more pronounced as he witnessed the success of both individual and team efforts. The courtyard seemed to radiate with energy and accomplishment. Soldiers stood tall, some adjusting their armor with pride, others exchanging quiet congratulations with their companions. Even the sun seemed brighter, casting warm light over the polished surfaces of armor and weapons, reflecting the sense of joy and achievement in the space. Roland walked along the line one last time, nodding to each soldier, his rare smile evident to all. The guards returned his gaze with respect, gratitude, and subtle admiration, aware that this inspection had been unlike any they had ever experienced. Finally, Roland approached Aldrich, who remained calm and composed despite the excitement around him. The captain's voice was warm, almost approving, as he spoke. "You have not only performed flawlessly, Aldrich," he said, "but you have also inspired those around you. Today's inspection will be remembered not just for skill and discipline, but for the spirit you have brought to this courtyard." Aldrich bowed respectfully, acknowledging the compliment without arrogance, his calm demeanor a testament to his character and training. The other soldiers, witnessing this interaction, felt a renewed sense of pride and unity. They had participated in something extraordinary. A routine inspection had transformed into a moment of joy, inspiration, and subtle celebration of skill. Roland's smile, rare and genuine, reflected not only approval, but also the realization that leadership and excellence could create moments of shared happiness, even in the most disciplined and formal settings. By the end of the morning, the courtyard had been transformed. Soldiers stood straighter, moved with confidence, and carried a sense of pride that had been absent earlier. The inspection, once expected to be a tense, formal affair, had evolved into an experience that celebrated skill, leadership, and camaraderie. Captain Roland, still smiling, knew that this day would be remembered for years, not just for the flawless performance of the soldiers, but for the subtle joy and unity that had been created through skill, discipline, and shared effort. The afternoon sun was now high above the castle, casting a warm glow across the courtyard, where the royal guard stood at attention. After hours of rigorous inspection, drills, and exercises, the soldiers had transitioned from nervous discipline to confident pride. The courtyard, which had earlier felt tense and formal, was now filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The soldiers' armor shone in the sunlight, their weapons gleamed, and their eyes carried a renewed spark of energy. What had begun as a routine inspection had transformed into something far greater, a lesson in skill, leadership, and the joy of excellence. Captain Rowland, who had spent the morning moving between the rows of soldiers, observing, instructing, and subtly testing, now took a moment to pause and reflect. He had been a part of countless inspections over the years, each one strict, structured, and, in his view, necessary. Yet today had been different. Today he had witnessed more than discipline, he had witnessed inspiration. Sir Aldrich, standing calmly at the center of the courtyard, had not only demonstrated exceptional skill and knowledge, but had also elevated the entire group through his quiet leadership. Roland allowed himself a deep, rare breath of satisfaction, feeling a sense of pride that had little to do with his own authority and everything to do with what he had observed. The captain began walking slowly along the line of soldiers one last time, taking the time to observe each individual. He noted how even those who had struggled earlier now held themselves with confidence, following Aldrich's example. Small gestures of teamwork, subtle nods of encouragement, and quiet exchanges of camaraderie reflected the transformation that had occurred over the course of the morning. Roland realized that excellence was contagious, that discipline and skill could inspire joy, and that a strong leader could lift an entire team through example alone. Roland finally reached Aldrich. The young guard, standing perfectly upright and calm as ever, met the captain's gaze without a hint of arrogance. "You have done well today," Roland said, his voice carrying a rare warmth. "Not only in your skill and discipline, but in the way you have guided those around you. You have reminded us all that excellence can inspire, and that leadership is not only about commands, it is about influence and example." Aldrich bowed respectfully, acknowledging the praise with humility. His calm demeanor reflected the quiet confidence that had guided him throughout the morning. The other soldiers, observing the exchange, felt a wave of pride and motivation wash over them. They realized that they had been part of something extraordinary. The inspection, which had begun as a routine test of readiness, had become a demonstration of leadership, skill, and mutual respect. Even those who had initially been nervous or uncertain now stood taller, their movements more precise, their expressions carrying a subtle joy. Roland's rare smile lingered, visible to all, and the soldiers responded with a mix of respect, gratitude, and quiet celebration. Roland decided to address the entire guard before concluding the inspection. His voice, usually reserved and stern, carried a tone of encouragement and approval that was almost unfamiliar to the soldiers. "Today, I have seen skill, discipline, and precision," he began. "But more importantly, I have seen how one individual's example can influence an entire group. Excellence is not only about personal achievement, it is about lifting others, inspiring confidence, and fostering unity. You have all shown dedication and focus, and I am proud of what I have witnessed." The soldiers straightened, their pride evident in the way they held themselves. Sir Aldrich, standing quietly at the center, had not sought recognition, yet his influence was unmistakable. The guards understood that his composure, discipline, and calm leadership had shaped the entire morning, and their respect for him grew even stronger. Small smiles, subtle nods, and quiet acknowledgments passed among them, a silent agreement that this inspection had been exceptional in every sense. Roland allowed himself a moment to reflect on what had made the day so extraordinary. Inspections were usually exercises of authority, moments to correct mistakes, and opportunities to ensure discipline. But today had revealed something deeper: the impact of example, the power of quiet leadership, and the joy that comes from witnessing excellence in action. He realized that while rules, training, and precision were essential, the human element, the ability to inspire, to guide, and to uplift, was just as vital. The captain's gaze swept over the courtyard one last time. Soldiers adjusted their armor, checked their weapons, and exchanged quiet words of encouragement. There was a sense of harmony, of accomplishment, and of shared pride that had not existed at the start of the morning. The transformation was remarkable. What had begun as a formal, serious inspection had become a moment of unity, joy, and inspiration. Roland's heart swelled with a quiet satisfaction, knowing that this day would be remembered not just for technical skill, but for the spirit it had fostered. He approached Aldrich once more, offering a brief, approving nod. "Remember this feeling," Roland said softly. "Discipline, skill, and focus are important, but the ability to inspire those around you, that is what makes a leader truly remarkable." Aldrich bowed, acknowledging the lesson, his calm demeanor unchanged but his eyes reflecting quiet pride. The young guard understood that leadership was as much about influence and example as it was about personal skill. The sun was now at its peak, shining brightly over the courtyard. The warm light reflected off polished armor, casting tiny sparks that seemed to dance across the stone floor. Birds chirped in the nearby gardens, and a gentle breeze rustled the banners fluttering above the walls. The scene was peaceful, almost idyllic, a fitting conclusion to a morning that had started with tension and ended with joy. The soldiers, having completed their drills and exercises, now stood in relaxed formation, their postures still disciplined but lighter, freer, and more confident. Roland took a deep breath, feeling a rare sense of contentment. He had seen countless soldiers pass through his inspections, but few had inspired the way Aldrich had. It was not just skill or precision that mattered, it was the ability to lead by example, to foster confidence and pride, and to transform the mood of those around him. Roland understood that the day had been successful not because mistakes had been avoided, but because excellence had been demonstrated, celebrated, and shared. The captain decided to conclude the inspection with a few final words for the entire guard. "Take pride in what you have achieved today," he said. "Remember that skill alone is not enough. Discipline is essential, but the ability to support one another, to inspire confidence, and to act with calm precision, that is what sets a truly remarkable guard apart. Learn from each other, support each other, and carry the lessons of today forward. You have all shown what it means to serve with honor and dedication." The soldiers stood taller, absorbing the words. Their expressions reflected not only pride but also a renewed sense of purpose. Aldrich at the center remained calm, yet there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. He understood the impact of his example, and he felt a deep sense of responsibility to continue guiding those around him, with the same calm composure and discipline that had defined his performance throughout the morning. As the inspection officially ended, the guards began to disperse, some adjusting their armor, others exchanging quiet congratulations, and a few taking a moment to reflect on what they had learned. The courtyard, once filled with tension and nervous energy, was now alive with quiet joy, mutual respect, and camaraderie. Roland watched them move, his smile lingering. For him, the day had been more than an inspection. It had been a reminder of why he had devoted his life to the service of the kingdom, and of the extraordinary potential that lay within disciplined, skilled, and inspired soldiers. Finally, Roland and Aldrich stood together near the center of the courtyard. The captain's voice carried a tone of approval, warmth, and encouragement. "Well done, Aldrich. Today, you have shown skill, discipline, and leadership in a way that will be remembered for years. Keep this example in mind and continue to guide those around you. True excellence is not just about yourself. It is about lifting others, inspiring confidence, and creating pride in all that you do." Aldrich nodded respectfully, his calm demeanor unchanged but his eyes reflecting quiet pride and understanding. He realized that the morning's events had not only tested his skill, but had also demonstrated the power of influence, teamwork, and subtle leadership. He understood that every action, every word, and every movement could inspire others, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose and responsibility. As the sun began its slow descent in the late afternoon sky, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Captain Roland finally allowed himself to step back and observe the entire scene. Soldiers moved with confidence, their postures proud and precise, their faces calm yet carrying subtle smiles. The young guard, Sir Aldrich, remained at the center, a quiet leader whose example had transformed not just the inspection, but the mood, confidence, and unity of the entire guard. Roland's mind reflected on the morning's lessons. Discipline, skill, and focus were essential, but true leadership came from influence, example, and the ability to inspire. The courtyard, now bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun, felt like a place of accomplishment and quiet celebration. What had started as a formal inspection had become a day of learning, pride, and joy. Captain Roland's rare, genuine smile lingered as he walked among the guards one last time, offering nods of approval and encouragement. The soldiers, inspired and proud, had not only demonstrated skill, they had shared in the experience of transformation, of teamwork, and of subtle joy that comes from excellence in action.